chart's wrong, Kaya Mercer said it quietly. She said it to no one in particular, standing alone in the corridor, outside room 14, the manila folder open in her hands. The fluorescent light above her buzzed faintly. The hallway was empty. She said it a second time, softer, the way you say something when you already know it's going to cost you. No one answered. No one was there to answer. What the staff of the Lakemont Veterans Transition Center did not know, not the duty physician, not the charge nurse, not the case review board that had filed its final paperwork that same morning, was that Kaya had spent the last 40 minutes not reading the SEAL's file. She had been reading his dog's chart, and something in that chart did not match. We tell stories here about the people who notice things, the ones who stay late and ask one more question when everyone else has already signed their name and gone home. This community was built for them. If you are one of them, or if someone once did that for you, we hope you feel at home here. Subscribe if you do. Stay as long as you need. And when this story is over, we would love to know, has anyone ever caught something for you that everyone else had already missed? Tell us in the comments. We read every one. The Lakemont Veterans Transition Center sat in a wide, low building on the edge of a small Wisconsin city. Late November. The morning light came in flat and pale through tall windows on the east wall, fell across a polished linoleum floor, and lit the dust in the air the way light does in rooms that are very still. It was a quiet place by design, quiet in the way that institutions are quiet when they believe their paperwork is in order. Kaya Mercer was 31 years old, dark hair, cut to her jaw and tucked behind one ear, pale gray eyes that moved carefully, the way eyes do when they have learned that small things matter. She wore plain navy scrubs, her hospital badge clipped to the left shoulder seam, her stethoscope folded in her front pocket rather than worn around her neck. She had a habit, one that her coworkers had noticed without ever quite naming, of pausing in doorways. Not hesitating, pausing. There was a difference, though few at Lakemont had thought to mark it. She paused now, in the doorway of room 14, looking at the man inside. His name was Darius Wynn, 34, former Navy SEAL, 6 years active, 2 deployments, dark skin, broad through the shoulders, shorter than most people expected when they saw him walk. He sat upright in the facility chair, not the bed, which said something about him. His hands rested open on his knees. He was looking at the window. Beside him, on a mat on the floor, lay the dog. The dog's name was Birch, a Belgian Malinois, 4 years old, retired from active service 3 months prior. Tawny and dark-masked, lean as a sentence with no extra words in it. Birch lay with his chin on his forepaws, and his amber eyes half open, tracking the room at a frequency no human in the building could hear. Kaya watched the dog for a moment, then she looked at Darius, then she looked at the folder again. "Mr. Wynn," she said, "can I ask you something about Birch?" Darius turned from the window. He looked at her, the way tired people look at one more person who has come to ask a question. "Sure," he said. She held up the folder. His last field health record. It lists a secondary handler. Darius was quiet for a moment. "That's right," he said. "Who was that?" He looked back at the window. Someone who didn't make it back. Kaya did not write anything down. She did not say she was sorry, though she was. She simply nodded, once, and made a note inside herself where it would stay. She had been at Lakemont 11 months. She had arrived quietly, with a single reference letter and a personnel file that no one had opened past the first page. She worked the transition ward, which was what they called the floor, where the veterans with companion animals stayed during their medical clearance process. It was not considered a prestigious assignment. The other nurses rotated through it for a week or two. Kaya had asked to stay. She was first to arrive most mornings. The overnight staff would find her at the station when they came to give report, already sitting with coffee and the previous shift's notes open, her pen moving in the margins. She never asked for credit for the extra hour. She never mentioned it. She absorbed the work, the way good soil absorbs water, quietly, completely, with no fuss. Her closest colleague on the ward was a nurse named Tomas Reyes, 2 years her senior, who had the particular gift of saying the thing everyone else was only thinking. He liked Kaya with the uncomplicated loyalty of someone who has watched another person do the right thing often enough to trust them completely. "You stayed late again," he said, finding her at the station that Tuesday morning. "Caught up," she said. She was reading. "Caught up," he repeated. He poured himself coffee. "On whose chart?" "Wynn's. Wynn's been cleared. Board signed off yesterday." "I know." She turned a page. Tomas leaned against the counter and looked at her. "Kaya." "The dog's file, Tomas. Birch has a handler notation that doesn't correspond to anything in Darius's service summary." "The dog's file," Tomas said slowly. He put his cup down. She nodded. He crossed his arms. "The board signed off. Doctors cleared him. The discharge paperwork is processing." "I know that too." He was quiet for a moment. "You're going to say something." "I'm going to ask something." She looked up. "There's a difference." He did not look convinced. But he refilled her coffee without being asked, which was his way of saying he was with her. The companion animal ward at Lakemont ran on a careful schedule. Each veteran in the program had a structured daily routine with their dog: feeding, grooming, a brief outdoor period in the facility's south yard, and a guided rest period mid-morning. The dogs were there to support the veterans, but the dogs also needed care, and Kaya took that seriously in a way that others on staff found slightly outside her job description. She knew each dog's name, weight, feeding notes, and behavior baseline. She knew that Birch ate left to right out of his bowl, and always left the last 3 bites, which the first week staff sometimes reported as a food refusal concern, until she explained it. She knew he was calmer when Darius sat on the floor rather than the chair. She knew he tracked the door of room 14 whenever footsteps passed in the corridor, and only fully relaxed when he had confirmed the footsteps belonged to someone Darius had already approved. She was watching Birch one afternoon, 4 days into Darius's final clearance week, when she noticed it. She was standing outside the room with the day's meds on her cart. The late afternoon sun came low through the east windows and lit the floor in long amber rectangles. Birch was lying in one of those rectangles of light, eyes half closed. Then, something shifted in him. No sound had changed, no door had opened, but Birch lifted his head precisely 30 seconds before Dr. Raymond Holt appeared at the end of the corridor. Kaya stayed very still. She watched. Birch tracked the approaching footsteps. He did not stand. He did not bark. He simply watched the door, and when Dr. Holt appeared in it, Birch's gaze moved to Darius for exactly 1 second, then back to the door, then to Darius again. It was a signal. That was the only word for it. Darius had straightened slightly in his chair. His hands, which had been open on his knees, had closed. Kaya made a note. Dr. Raymond Holt was the facility's chief of transition medicine, 58, silver-haired, with the smooth authority of someone who has not been wrong in his own memory in quite some time. He was not unkind, not exactly. He was confident, which in institutions sometimes amounts to the same thing. He had reviewed Darius Wynn's case personally, he had concurred with the board's findings, and he had expressed his satisfaction with the outcome in a brief memo that used the phrase, "case resolved," twice. He had also, in a hallway conversation 2 days prior, gestured toward the companion animal ward and said something to his resident that Kaya had heard from 10 feet away. She had not been meant to hear it. The words were, "These dogs are a fine program, but we don't base discharge decisions on what a dog does at dinner time." His resident had smiled. Kaya had not. She had turned back to her chart and kept writing, not because it didn't sting, because she had learned, somewhere and at some cost, that stillness is not the same as agreement. When Holt entered room 14 that afternoon, she stayed in the corridor. She heard him tell Darius that the discharge was confirmed. She heard Darius say, "Yes, sir." She heard no other response. She heard the door open and Holt walk back out, and she heard him say to his resident, without lowering his voice at all, straightforward, exactly what it looked like. Tomas appeared beside her. You heard that, she said. I heard it, he said. What are you going to do? She looked at the folder in her hands. Request a consult. From whom? The Regional K9 Handler Coordinator. His name is listed in Birch's original intake record. Tomas blinked. The regional. He stopped. Kaya. Holt signed off. The board signed off. I know. This is going to land on you. I know that too. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, I'll pull the intake record. She was in Holt's office the following morning at 7:45. The light was thin and gray, through his north-facing window, the kind of morning light that offers no warmth. She knocked. He said, come in. She came in. She stood in front of his desk with the folder and explained, without preamble or apology, that she had noted a behavioral discrepancy in Birch's field record, that the dog's response patterns during Darius's clearance week were consistent with active therapeutic signaling, not retired companion behavior, and that she was requesting a formal observation with the Regional K9 Coordinator before the discharge processed. He looked at her the way men look at something small that has unexpectedly required their attention. A nurse, he said, is requesting a consult on a dog's behavior. Yes, she said. Based on observation. She set the folder on his desk. She did not push it. She set it there and stepped back so that he would have to reach for it rather than having it pressed on him. He looked at the folder. He did not reach for it. Nurse Mercer, he said, I appreciate thoroughness. Truly. But we are not in the business of delaying veteran discharges based on nursing observations of animal behavior. I understand, she said. I'm still asking. Silence. He picked up the folder. He read for approximately 40 seconds. He looked up. This is a handler notation. It's a secondary handler notation, she said, for a partner who died in service, which means Birch was trained as a dual response animal, standard companion and crisis alert. The crisis alert training never appears in the discharge assessment because no one flagged the notation. Another silence. I'll make a call, he said finally. His voice was flat. One consult, one observation session. If the coordinator finds nothing of significance, this goes no further. That's all I'm asking, she said. He picked up his phone before she had left the room. The observation was set for Thursday morning. The facility's south-facing therapy room was used, a long space with glass panels along one wall that opened onto a small indoor walkway. Chairs were arranged on the walkway side of the glass. Kaya stood at the far end of the corridor when the observers assembled. She counted them without meaning to. Dr. Holt, his resident, the facility director, 2 members of the care team, and at the end of the row, a man she did not know. He was perhaps 65, broad through the chest, gray at the temples, a little stooped, with the look of someone who has spent a long career outdoors. He wore civilian clothes, a heavy jacket, and he carried nothing. No clipboard, no folder. He stood apart from the others and looked through the glass at Birch with an expression that Kaya could not immediately name. His name, she had learned from the intake record, was Gerald Oakes, Regional K9 Coordinator, 22 years in military working dog programs, retired. The session began simply. Darius walked Birch through a standard engagement sequence. Sit, stay, heel, come. Birch performed each one with the clean precision of a dog who does not find these tasks challenging. The observers watched. Holt made a note. His resident murmured something. Then Kaya, from her place at the end of the corridor, gave the signal she had arranged with the therapy coordinator. A neutral audio tone played through the room, a tone calibrated to a mild stress response frequency used in the facility's standard assessment protocol. Birch turned, not toward the speaker, not toward the door, toward Darius. Birch crossed the 3 feet between them without hesitation. He pressed his flank against Darius's left leg, turned his head upward, and held it there. He did not bark. He did not jump. He simply placed himself and stayed. Darius went very still. Silence on the walkway side of the glass. Then, Holt said, could be a trained sit behavior. Gerald Oakes said nothing. He had stepped forward to the glass. His hand was against it, one palm flat, and his face had changed. "That's," the resident started. Oakes turned. "That's an alert." Holt frowned. "It's possible the dog simply—" "That is a crisis alert," Oakes said. His voice was quiet. Very quiet. "Left flank press. Head up. Hold position. That's a specific protocol." He paused. "That's a Callaway protocol." No one said anything. Holt said, "A what?" Oakes did not answer immediately. He was looking at Birch. He was looking at the dog, with something that took Kaya a moment to understand. It was recognition, not general recognition, the specific kind. "Where did this dog train?" Oakes asked. Tomas had the folder. He stepped forward and read from it. "Basic training, Fort Meade, Advanced Handler Program." He stopped. "Say it," Oakes said. "Advanced Handler Program, Operational Unit 7. For several long seconds, no one moved. Gerald Oakes took one slow breath. "I built that program," he said. The room did not make noise. Not a note, not a shoe on the floor, not a breath that anyone chose to release. Holt said, "I'm sorry?" Oakes had already turned toward the door. He did not explain further. He walked through the corridor, through the interior door, and into the therapy room, and when Birch heard the handle turn, the dog looked up. Birch looked at the door, and then Birch stood. He stood from his position against Darius's leg, where no tone or command had released him, and he stood and faced the door, and his tail moved once. Not the frantic sweep of excitement. One deliberate arc, low and slow. Oakes came through the door. He stopped. He looked at the dog. "Oh, hey, son," he said. Birch walked to him, directly, calmly, without rushing. He pressed his forehead against Oakes's knee and stayed. Kaya watched through the glass. Her hand had found the edge of the doorframe without her knowing it. She was holding on, just slightly. Oakes knelt. He was a large man, and it was not easy for him, but he knelt all the way down, and he put both hands on either side of Birch's face, and he looked at the dog for a long moment without speaking. Then he looked up at Darius. "His other handler," Oakes said. "Tell me his name." Darius's jaw tightened. A long pause. "Corpsman First Class Elijah Pratt," he said. "He died 16 months ago." Oakes lowered his head. His hands stayed on Birch's face. "Eli trained under me," he said. 7 years ago, he was—" He stopped. He started again. "He was exceptional." The observers in the corridor had gone very still. Kaya saw the resident reach out and rest one hand against the glass. "I didn't know Birch had gone back to service after Eli," Oakes said. He raised his head. His eyes were red at the rims. "Birch wasn't supposed to," Darius said. "They needed him." "I know they did." Another silence. Holt cleared his throat from the corridor, though he did not speak. He had the folder now. Kaya had passed it through without remembering exactly when. He was reading it. He was reading it slowly, and the expression on his face was the expression of someone who has been confident for a very long time and has just encountered something confidence could not have predicted. "How long did they train together?" Oakes asked. He was speaking to Darius, but his hands were still on Birch. 14 months. "Callaway protocol is 340 hours minimum," Oakes said. He looked back at the dog. "Eli did the full sequence. There are maybe 12 dogs alive right now who can run a full Callaway alert. Most handlers spend a career and never see one." He paused. "Birch can run it in the field, in transition, in a residential setting. He adjusts for environment." Another pause. "He just ran it through glass." Holt's resident said something that was not quite a word. "This dog," Oakes said, and then he stopped and simply held the dog's face in his hands and did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Kaya stepped into the room. She moved quietly, as she always moved. She came to stand a few feet from Oakes and Darius, and she waited until Darius looked at her. "I should have asked sooner," she said. About the notation. You asked, he said. The alert protocol, the left flank press. You knew what it meant. He looked at Birch. He's done it every night, he said. Since I got here. Every night at around 2, 3 in the morning. He presses against my leg and he just stays. She looked at him. What happens when he does that? Darius did not answer immediately. He looked at the window. The morning light had shifted and was coming now more softly through the south glass, pale gold and steady. I sleep, he said finally. I actually sleep. No one on the walkway side of the glass made a sound. Oakes rose slowly from the floor. He straightened, and he turned, and he looked through the glass panel at the row of observers. He looked at each face in turn, and when he reached Holt's, he stopped. He did not say anything unkind. He was not that kind of man. He said, "This dog has been doing medically significant therapeutic work for the entirety of this veteran's stay at your facility." He said it the way you state a fact that does not require your opinion to be true. That work should have been in his discharge assessment. It wasn't, because no one read the full field record. He looked at Kaya. One person did, he said. Holt set the folder down. He set it very carefully on the walkway ledge, as though it might break. He looked at Kaya. Then he looked at the floor. He did not say anything that could be called a defense. "Doctor," Oakes continued, still quiet, "this discharge needs an addendum. The therapeutic alert work needs to be documented formally. And the recommendation," he paused, "my recommendation is that the placement be extended, formally recognized, and that Birch's designation be amended from retired companion to active therapeutic." Holt nodded, just once, short and flat. "I'll initiate the paperwork," he said. Nobody cheered. Nobody moved loudly. The facility director stood at the end of the walkway with his hands in his pockets, and after a moment he said, very quietly, "See that it's done by end of week." That was all. Oakes turned back to Kaya. He said, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said. "How did you know to look at the dog's chart?" She was quiet for a moment. She looked at Birch, who had returned to Darius's side, and was lying down again, chin on his forepaws, amber eyes tracking the room. "I didn't," she said. "I just thought if nobody was reading it, I should." Oakes looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Where did you train?" She shook her head gently. She was not going to answer that question yet. The following morning, Oakes was waiting for her at the nurse's station at 7:15. The early light came in pale and clean from the east windows, fell in long lines across the station counter. He was holding a coffee he hadn't drunk. He waited until Tomas had stepped away. Then he said, "I pulled your personnel file last night." Kaya looked up from her chart. "With the director's permission," he added. He set the untouched coffee down. "Just the first page. There wasn't much there." "No," she said. "But there was a service notation, attached as a secondary document." He paused. "Combat trauma nurse, deployed theater, 18 months. He looked at her. "Before you came here." She did not say yes. She did not say no. She held her pen over the chart. "You were in the field with working dogs," he said. A silence. "One of the handlers, the one in your unit, his dog ran a Callaway alert the night before an op." She looked up. He nodded slowly. "You knew what it meant, because you'd seen it save a life." She set her pen down. "Several," she said, softly. "Several lives." Tomas had come back without making noise. He stood at the far edge of the station. He did not speak. He looked at Kaya with the expression of someone realizing that a person they already admired was someone different and larger than they had known. "You left the field," Oakes said. "I did. After, she agreed. He was quiet for a moment. "After the handler died." She did not confirm it. She did not have to. "He was my friend," she said. "Not his name, not the details. Just, he was my friend." The corridor was bright and still. The fluorescent hum was the only sound. Outside room 14, Birch's nails clicked once on the linoleum, and then was quiet. Oakes said, "Every dog who trained under that program, under the Callaway Protocol, they remember." He looked at her. "I think Birch knew what you knew. I think he recognized it." She looked at the room. She looked at the closed door of room 14. "I noticed the notation," she said. "That's all I did." "You noticed it," he said, "when 6 doctors didn't." She picked up her pen. She went back to her chart. It was the most she was going to say about it, and they both understood that. Tomas waited until Oakes had walked down the corridor and around the corner. Then he stood beside Kaya and did not speak for a moment. "Then, you never told me." "It wasn't mine to tell," she said. He considered that for a long moment. "The handler in your unit." He stopped. "It was a long time ago," she said, but her voice was not flat when she said it. There was something in it, small and true, like a light in a window that someone remembers to leave on. He nodded. He did not push further. "The discharge addendum came through this morning," he said after a while. "Birch is formally reclassified. Extended placement. Active therapeutic designation." He paused. "The whole ward knows." She was writing. She didn't look up. He smiled, not because it was funny, but because he was glad. 6 weeks later, in the first real cold of January, the morning routine on the companion animal ward had a small addition. It had begun in the 3rd week after the observation and had simply continued, the way good things do when no one decides to stop them. At 7 in the morning, just as the overnight staff finished their report and the day shift arrived, Darius brought Birch down the corridor. Not for rounds, not for medication, just to walk. The corridor lit up gold from the east windows, and Birch moved through it steady and alert, his nails a soft rhythm on the linoleum, his amber eyes moving warmly over the faces he had come to know. The staff came to the doorways of their rooms without being asked. So did the veterans on the floor. Birch stopped for each of them. A moment, a press of his warm flank, a calm, upturned gaze. 14 seconds, sometimes 20. Then he moved on. One morning, a girl of perhaps 9 stood in the corridor. The daughter of one of the staff members, brought in for a school holiday, wearing red boots too large for her feet. She watched Birch come down the hall and watched him stop beside the man in room 9, and she tugged at the sleeve of the older nurse standing next to her. "Why does he always stop?" she asked. The nurse was named Bridget, and she had been at Lakemont for 19 years, and she looked at Birch, and then at the girl, and she said, "Because he knows who needs a moment." The girl thought about this. "How does he know?" "Because someone taught him," Bridget said, "and someone remembered to look." On the wall beside room 14, in the weeks after the reclassification, someone had placed a small wooden plaque. It was modest, unofficial. No one acknowledged who had put it there, though Tomas had a guess and never shared it. It read, in plain letters, the kind you can read at a distance, "Some charts only look finished." The girl read it, mouthing the words. Birch came back down the corridor. He paused at the door of room 14. He turned and looked back toward the nurse's station, toward the woman in navy scrubs with dark hair tucked behind one ear, who was already writing, already at work, already doing the thing she always did first. He held her gaze for a moment. Just a moment. Then he turned and lay down in a rectangle of pale January light and closed his amber eyes and rested. We hope this story stayed with you. This channel exists for the ones who stay late, who read one more page, who notice what no one asked them to notice. If that sounds like someone you know, or someone you want to be, we would be glad to have you here. Subscribe, and come back whenever you need a reminder that quiet work is real work. And we have one question for you. Has anyone ever caught something for you, something small and easy to overlook, that changed everything? We would love to hear about it in the comments.